sci-fi, comedy, horror, you name it.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I switched into fiction, I wanted to tell a story that was a little bit more personal, a little bit more kind of down to earth, and while fictional, like would kind of tell something that
Right.
was kind of hit close to home for me. So it's cool to see that kind of read properly, that kind of came across.
No, what I loved about your book is that you don't have to get into what percentage of the book is you, but you could tell that the blueprint, at least of the town, is something that you knew well. You know, like
Yeah.
my very first book, The Dream of the Boy Who Caught 22, it's kind of like about my hometown and the things I went through. I've grown up in like a small town right outside of like the big city. Me growing up in New York, I'm maybe 40 minutes away from the Five Boroughs or whatever, the big city. So
Yeah.
although they might think they're the only ones that go through things, it's like no, the kids that are considered suburb kids go through a lot too.
Yep.
It's like, the EBT welfare stuff doesn't stop with you guys. Like it
Exactly.
transcends past
And that's what I loved
major
about.
cities.
Exactly, and that's what I loved about reading Kids of the Diaspora too, because I felt that kind of that voice or like that perspective, even though you're from like the New York area, I'm from Chicago area. Like you said, like there's some experiences that just transcend where
Right.
and it kind of gets universal at that point.
Right. And I loved how dark you made it, but it was still light in certain moments where you just had to smile, although you knew you shouldn't probably smile, like during some of the tragic points, for sure. So writing this, I guess my first question is, did writing this exhaust you or did it energize you?
Both. It was every time I made a milestone with it, kind of got this, this draft done or got a few extra kind of chapters, like the interlude chapters, where I kind of had other people's perspective. That was something I added in, totally separately after I finished
Right.
the first one. But yeah, I'd say like all the milestones energized me, but the actual writing of it, I laid it all out there. Like I put
Yeah.
everything I had into that book, so I don't regret it, but it was tough.
No, I could imagine. And then I think keeping people don't understand that it's not having written a lot like you or me probably, that keeping the tone of a third person of just not a regular narrative for people just to be the narrative of the reader and keeping it in the voice of the protagonist, we'll say, is more difficult than people think for those
Yep.
periods of time for as long as you did it. And I think
Yeah.
that's what I was impressed with most is like he had to make a conscious decision from the beginning to keep it this way, and it's not easy to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a fun challenge to kind of tackle some of those eras how I remembered them, but then
Mhm.
kind of even though this character is based on me, to still kind of shift it a little bit, and just kind of write about the '90s that I remembered or the 2000s that I remembered. Um, yeah, it's always interesting going back to those time periods.
Right, absolutely. Were you born in 90 or 91? And the reason I could
90.
tell that, okay, 90 as well, me too.
Yep.
I could tell that by the grade you were in with the chapter about 9/11.
Yep.
So that's when I knew, all right, he's either a year older or we're both the same age and went through it the same way, kind of going through school of
Yep.
just like, yeah. My parents didn't pick me up that day. I was like everyone else's kid thought something, because you're by the CS Tower, so I'm sure some kids got taken out of school with parents
Yep.
frantic and panicking.
Yep.
Yeah, same here. Well, because the towers actually went down, but that's not here nor there. So how can I say this? So I read the book and there's like so many thoughts coming in my head. One of the passages, do you mind if I read it? It's on page
Not at all.
213.
Yeah.
It's a quick paragraph, but it's like the way you positioned it. It's like from like me being a writer and then reading someone else that write, it just made me like, oh, okay, this is him just putting something in here for himself compared to you putting something in for like everyone else to get. And like I love to do that for myself just so I know I didn't waste my time trying to do something if I don't get the results that I want. It's like at least I know in this moment here, I feel good about it. And I feel like that's what you did in this part here that I'm about to read. So hopefully I'm right. Maybe I'm not, but it's a quick paragraph. You wrote, I'm walking these streets now, At 24, the whole neighborhood changed, and yet exactly the same. There's a funny thing about moving on. Like everything else, the destination seems so final. The happy ending, roll credits. They all live happily ever after. That's bullshit. The end is that there is no end. Forgiveness is a garden that needs endless watering. Pruning and tilling. The work will never be over. I just thought that was just a moment where you're just writing for yourself. You're not even writing for the book.
You're
Did
exactly
you?
right.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure I'm not off. Like I was like, okay.
Nope, spot on.
And that's when I knew it's like, okay, he's as much as he loves writing, he's probably frustrated with writing as me, and of just moments of growing up, of just putting your head against the wall, trying to figure out how to blossom in this space of doing it pretty much independent.
Yep. Yeah, it's no, that's exactly it. It's kind of that combination of kind of blossom where you are, where you're planted, but also, kind of where I grew up combined with, what I was going through while I was actually writing it. It was kind of both of those things of like
Right.
grappling with a lot of this heavier stuff, and then of course just being able to shift that onto the character and whatever they're
No,
going
absolutely. I just thought it was genius that you did that because I noticed I do that sometimes. And a lot of writers stay away from doing that, I think. And I don't know if it's a conscious thing or it's like, I know what you did was intentional. And that's what made me know, oh, you're a good writer because you're making them feel like it's part of their story, it's part of this story. But it's like, that's something
It's
for
so
you to hold
tricky
on
though.
to. No, it's not easy to pull off. But when you did it, I was like, that's for you. That's not for nobody else. Even if they don't catch it, I knew that was for you. And I was like, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm sorry if I'm embarrassing you by like just pointing
No.
those
I
things out.
really appreciate it. No, I really
Okay.
appreciate it, and it's cool because nobody else has picked up on that yet. So that was cool.
Yeah, I think it's just some things when when you really focus on the craft to the point where you're disgusted at times, you pick up on those things, and it's
Oh,
beautiful to see it. And I'm now transitioning a little bit more into screenplays and stuff, but it's like I could see why you went right to fiction if you got frustrated with screenplays because like you need a budget, you need a team, you gotta have an agent to like even get you in the right rooms with a screenplay where writing a book, you kind of have there's a possibility you could do it all by yourself.
yep. Yeah,
So
I still love screenwriting, and like I feel like I always will. But yeah, that was pretty much it for me, just for this story anyway, of just being able to control all of those elements. Like I don't have to worry necessarily about like, being able to get like a period appropriate like cars on the block and making it look like the 90s and getting like
right.
hair and makeup. It's like, if I make my words work hard enough, I can pull that off myself.
No, absolutely. And I think also it's like writers don't want to see their stuff always stuck in their laptop. They want it to go somewhere and they want it to reach a medium, whether that's in film or whether that's you forcing yourself now to make it a book. Is this originally a screenplay at first? And then you
No, yeah. So I thought about maybe doing it as a screenplay, but then I just kind of went straight into it with fiction. I started off by kind of having a bunch of different flash fiction pieces. I just did a bunch of short fiction to kind of test the water and like see if I could, write some characters like this. And I did it and I really enjoyed it. Got a few of those stories placed at different like magazines, and I was, kind of getting the hang of it, writing in that voice and figuring out those characters. Like even
right.
though they were based on people I knew, still kind of shifting it
Right.
to the
It's
of this character.
I
Yeah.
think people don't realize it's only about 30 to 33% of it is like an actual person you might know. The rest of it is made up of a perceived dramatized version of somebody most
Yep.
of the time.
Exactly. I've already had a few times where friends or family are like, "Oh, did this really happen, or is this person real?" And I'm like, "Yes, but." It's like there
Right.
is that element of reality, but a lot of it, you are working within the framework of dramatic fiction, and so
Right.
you have to structure it in that way. Yep.
So were you able to like